So now we're going to be looking at creating volumes from these 2D footprints. And it just so happens that in the last version of Houdini 20.5, they introduced a really nice node called planar Inflate. And we're just going to go ahead and plug it in, see what happens. So I'm going to whack this onto the smooth, and let's see the result it gives us. All right, so that obviously took a little while. It took a little while for me as well. It probably took a while for you. There's a few things we need to address and clean up, as well as the speed with which that operation took place. So first of all, let's go ahead and add a normal node after the inflate, so we can actually see the volumes better represented in the viewport, see what we're dealing with. So there we go. You can see that we have these kind of nice forms now that have been created all across the terrain. And to tell you the truth, for a very, very first stab, I think this is already not too bad. But we have a couple of issues, namely the performance, because with that slow performance, we're going to find that everything else we do is just that much more painful. And we're also going to risk running out of memory on our PC when we start chaining lots of these heavy operations over heavy geometry. I can also just double check my task manager and see where I'm currently at. We can see that I'm already at 52.8 out of 64 gigabytes, so that's just not going to do. We need to find a way to speed this up or optimize this. So first of all, let's check the density of the geometry, and let's turn off the update mode. So we're going to switch Houdini over to manual, and let's go through and look at a few parameters. First of all, we can see that the output has a target length of 0.2. That means that we're targeting about 20 centimeters between for the size of each of these polygons, or for the length of the edges more specifically. And at this stage, that's way, way, way too high for us. So we can go ahead and set that over to 1. That's immediately going to help. We can also speed up the processing by reducing the number of meshing iterations and the amount of global iterations as well. And also, I think these have, while they haven't done too bad of a job, the level of inflation right now is pretty high, and we can see everything looks quite pillowy and bulgy. So we're going to put the global scale down to 0.5. So there we've tweaked the planar inflate output, and hopefully that's going to reduce the amount of memory and increase the processing speed, amongst other things. But let's also now take a look at the inputs. So let's go back to smooth, and let's put it back onto on mouse up. And let's have a little look at what we're dealing with. So while this certainly isn't too bad and not super dense or anything necessarily to worry about, I am going to go ahead and put down a poly reduce after the smooth. And I'm going to put the poly reduce percent down to, say, 25 or 15. And now the purpose of this is actually twofold. So whereas previously we were using the smoothing to introduce these gaps between the rocks, we're actually going to go ahead and turn off the smoothing for now. We're just going to disable it. And we're also going to go ahead and make sure that our shading isn't messed up. So after the poly reduce, we'll put down another normal node, or maybe before it. There you go. And then we're going to look at the poly reduce once more. And you can see that by using the poly reduce instead of the smoothing, we're still getting a lot of these fractures being expressed, but in a much more organic way. And we've reduced as well the kind of regular appearance of the kind of quads that we were seeing, and we're getting a lot more of these kind of irregular triangle shapes, which to my eye, I think is going to give us a better, more organic looking basis to do the inflation from, with the side effect of we're actually inputting less geometry. And you can see that as we decrease the amount, we're going to be actually getting more breakup, and eventually I think it does go too far. So you have to really draw the line where you think it makes the most sense. And I think if we cut it down to about 25, this is giving us a nice basis to create these cliff shapes from. So we're sort of abusing the polyreduce here and the fact that it does a sort of irregular reduction and tries to preserve different properties. You could see that we could decrease the boundary stiffness, and this is going to allow these cracks to form more easily, or we can increase it. And you can basically play around with this and treat this as a nice way to define as well the volumes that are going to be put into the planar, created by the planar inflate. So now that we've done that, we can go ahead and run that planar inflate again, and this is going to run again for a few seconds, but let's have a look at how much faster it processes compared to before and the difference in the output. And that's much better. We went from about 50 seconds down to about 1.5 seconds or 2 seconds, with very little visual difference in the quality of the end result, potentially even increasing it by adding more of these little shard-like sharp rock shapes. So really happy with how those little modifications went. We're going to use another really cool tool that comes with Houdini, with Side Effects Labs, called the Mesh Sharpen. I'm going to see what this does to the geometry as well. Okay, well that was way too aggressive. Everything's seemingly become completely flat. And I'm going to do a couple of things to address this. First of all, if we go back to our planar inflate, we can see that the backsides of all of these pieces of geometry don't exist, which is nice and might actually be a useful optimization for the workflow, but I want to process these whole rocks as kind of closed meshes. So we're going to go to the planar inflate once more. I'm going to say output the back as well as the front. This will make it slightly slower to process, but not too much. And now we have these actual 3D pillow meshes, and you'll see that when we run the mesh sharpen now, oh, we're still getting a very, very aggressive result. So let's go and turn down the strength of that sharpening somewhat. And we can see that what we get, if we go ahead and turn off the wireframe, just look at the smooth shaded output, is we get this kind of, sharpening of all the points. If we enable a little bit of smoothing as well, it's going to kind of preserve a little bit more of its original shape, or try to. And it's going to enable us to sort of just slightly alter the kind of character of all of these pillows to be a little bit less rounded. And this is just one part of the post-processing step that we're going to sort of embark on over the next part of this series.